I am NetMoverSitan. Now before I move on to Chapter 3, Lore, I have a couple of videos that cover some minor topics by comparison. The Mirror Dungeon being one of them. Now, before I start with the main part of this video, I missed out the reference to the Divine Comedy that was supposed to be at the end of Chapter 2, Lore. Specifically, the Frozen Cavern. Yes, this is likely to be a reference to the ninth circle of hell, to do with treachery, where those that stabbed others in the back, literally or metaphorically, find themselves upon death. They find themselves in a lake of ice, which represented denials of human warmth, and found themselves trapped within it. For those that betrayed their families, those that betrayed their country, those that betrayed those that they offered hospitality to, those that betrayed their superiors, and even those that betrayed the divine. One of the more infamous of those, in that last one, is Judas Iscariot, where the deeper into this circle you go, the worse it is for those within it. From being able to bow their heads to provide some protection against the icy wind, to those fully encased in the ice, with the devil right in the middle of it. As for how this factors into Chapter 2, specifically where the Golden Bar is located, it's an area that's made up of an icy wasteland where not even the thickest coat can protect against the cold, implying that it's not just physical cold that they need to deal with there, where those that are frozen are not trapped in the ice. And this area likely represents the guilt that Roger felt due to what her actions resulted in when she killed the tax collector to take her wealth to feed those starving to death, which led to the middle massacring them, due to her sibling finding out that she was murdered, where she felt that she betrayed them, which is one of the reasons why she declined Sonia's offer to rejoin him, as she felt that she still belonged in the cold. As for what's in the center of this frozen area, it wasn't the devil, it was Baba Yaga, which, unlike him, she could move and was an active threat to the Damned Dozen. Also, the faces seen in the ice represented those that she betrayed, rather than actually being the most vile of traitors. Well, that and she had good intentions that ultimately caused more harm than good. Yes, I know, there are noticeable differences in the source, compared to the source material. Just need to look deeper into it. Well, I do, so you don't have to. Let's talk about Yi Sang. He is many things. A man of few words, a former associate of Gubo of Encore, and when he does speak, he is a speaker of riddle-like phrases that would provide small amusement to Edward Nigma. But above all, he's the inventor of the mirror technology. A technology that allows for individuals to access the abilities, skills, and memories of themselves from parallel worlds. In fact, there are times that, when they can be better, or at least different, compared to their base forms. But that's not the only application of what the Damned Dozen has access to. Although, Side notes, Iori the Purple Tear has the ability to actually travel to these parallel worlds. The other application of the mirror technology is to access the Mirror Dungeon, a pocket dimension filled with a number of different threats, and also great rewards for those capable of withstanding them. This was made accessible after Limbus Company had acquired its first golden bar. Is there a connection between this and the access to the Mirror Dungeon? Well, the timing of this is... it's too close for me to immediately dismiss this. As for the in-game context of this, I can imagine that Yi Sang had this ready for when he knew that he and the others needed training, in preparation for the stronger dangers that are to follow their mission in District 10. All that was needed was the golden bar to make this possible, which is part of why they couldn't access it sooner than after Chapter 2. That, and they were unlikely to be ready for it before then, which also implies that it's partially powered by Dante, as it's also implied that they absorbed the golden bar inside themselves. Although that's most of what makes it possible. To link up with the Mirror Dungeon, at least more than once a day, it requires 3 modules of Unkeflin to recharge the connection between the separate reality and Mephistopheles. Yes, I know. So much to talk about, and we haven't even got to what's inside it yet. Let's move on to that next. Inside the first Mirror Dungeon is a mix of what the damned dozen encountered in the run-down backstreets of District 4, the cramped and brightly lit District 10, and that which they had yet to encounter. The flow of time and the structure of reality within the Mirror Dungeon is not the same as outside it, as one time they could be in the back streets of District 4 fighting winged remnants, the next they could be in a casino within District 10 fighting syndicate thugs. Then they could be in what looks like a Western European medieval dungeon fighting monsters that don't look like humans, abnormalities, or distortions. Well, whatever they are, they're not something that's been encountered outside the Mirror Dungeon. At least, not at that point. In fact, there are 2 abnormalities that, spoiler alerts, do not appear in Chapter 3. These 2, in fact, are completely new. The headless Ichthys is a headless shark that has a nasty blood spray attack, although it prefers to crush its enemies with its weight, along with the alleyway watchdog, which looks like a twisted version of Cerberus, complete with 3 heads with power lines as a part of it, that can fry its enemies, as well as use its claws to make it bleed for those fighting it. I'll give a more detailed overview of these abnormalities when I get around to the specific lore video. Those are just a couple of examples of what can appear that hasn't appeared in the, well, at the end of Chapter 2. There are also other abnormalities there that, well, they're there, but they're not a direct threat. In fact, some of them can even be help, depending on how they're treated. If they're treated well, and the chosen sinner passes the check, then it can provide an Ijo gift. With the occasional fight from them, to get it. While failing the check, it either gives nothing or punishes the party with some kind of detriment, such as HP damage, SP damage, or a debuff. A few of these are aberrations of familiar abnormalities, which includes aberrations of Blue Star, Burrowing Heaven, Backwards Clock, and Happy Teddy Bear. Oh yes, also Red Shoes. Now, all but the last one are likely to appear as something fightable at some point in the future. The aberration of the red shoes, known as the pink shoes, that has already been fought, Chapter 2. As for the EGO gifts, they provide benefits to those that can utilize them, with the available identities. But they're only useful within the mirror dungeon. They won't be allowed to be taken out of that pocket dimension. Likely because they're tied to that separate reality and can't be removed from them. Well, that, and it would make the damned dozen way too overpowered. There's also a lack of control over who is selected to fight within the mirror dungeon after the initial selection, as while the way is stable at the start, allowing for free sinners to enter safely inside, it becomes less stable as they go deeper, only allowing for one more each time to enter. And this is at the end of each level of it, and even then, the full selection of those that remained, they aren't there. So Dante would have to make do with what they had. As for the rewards, they can gain combat experience, and could also gain various rewards, and 3 times a week, or 3 different excursions within the mirror dungeon a week, they also gain lunacy, a resource that is needed to potentially extract more identities and EGO. Likely for a similar reason why they can access the mirror dungeon without needing 3 Enkephalin modules each time. Well, at least once a day. Likely due to it being part of the normal operation of the bus, where it recharges this as it drives, although with the 3 Enkephalin modules for each entry into the mirror dungeon, that says how much was building up as the bus was driving each day. Although with the lunacy, it likely needs a week to gather 3 charges. Well, 3 charges of this, yes, as lunacy is such a valuable resource, and the damned dozen need to complete their journey through it in order to acquire it. There are other mirror dungeons, but they have yet to be accessible at this time, while the dungeon of the beginning, or whatever you want to call it, has everything from chapter 1 through 3, plus some extras here and there. Other mirror dungeons are likely to appear that either focus on the chapters beyond or include what is in the chapters beyond, which might provide a preview of things to come, much like the first mirror dungeon has. The damned dozen will need to utilize them in order to have any chance of withstanding what the city has to throw against it. Be it wing remnants, abnormalities, or even the forces of current wings like J-Corp, or even N-Corp, their arch enemies. I'll continue covering the lore of the story But not just yet, as I have one more lore video to cover before that. It'll be more an analysis on the damned dozen's characters than anything. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!